other comments mentioned it, and I mentioned it in the past video, $15 Poison or Infect. If you wanted to do this without being, pardon the pun, extremely toxic,
$15
Infect. Infect. Try Kami's Obscura Oculus.
$15
Infect. Not sure if it's Infect. Definitely see what you take. Fine. I'll go ahead and make an Infect deck. If you guys want me to make that such a toxic thing, I will just make it, and then nobody will ask me to make a toxic deck ever again. Right? Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about what Infect is for those who are new to Magic and might not know. Infect is a mechanic where if somebody gets 10 poison counters, they automatically die. Now, technically, it's the poison mechanic, and we've got Infect, Poison, and Toxic as ways of making sure that a person gets poison counters, but the reality is everybody knows the effect as the Infect effect, because it never really mattered until Infect came out. So let's go ahead and talk about what we are going to be doing today. The strategy we are employing is effectively what's called a dirty bomb. So let's talk about Roalesque Apex Hybrid. This creature says, when it enters the battlefield, put 2 1/1 counters on another creature you control. That bit of text is irrelevant. Then it says, if it dies, proliferate. Then proliferate again. So let me go ahead and explain how this works. So if you're playing Infect and every player has 1 poison counter on them, proliferating allows you to choose the amount of counters that are on everybody, and you can just increase those by 1 if you want. Now, note, this means if somebody has experience counters, it will increase that as well, so be careful with that. But, I mean, you could just do this to kill the person really, really quickly, so I guess it doesn't matter if somebody's playing, like, Athari or something. Anyways, if you proliferate, it's effectively like hitting people with 1 more Hyper Commander damage. In Commander, if you hit somebody with 21 damage, they die. With Infect, you hit somebody with 10, they die. So, what is the strategy here? Well, we are going to be taking this Simic Commander, and we are going to be causing him to, engage in suicide a lot. Like, Roalesque is going to be in our grave and in the command zone more often than he's actually on the board, but everybody else will die to our deck just kind of functioning as normal. So let's go ahead and talk about what we are going to do. First of all, as every green and blue deck should be able to do, we have a very, very strong 12-card ramp package. Let's go ahead and talk about what all is available in that package for us, because it's a bit of a doozy how fun some of the things are that we get to play in here, regardless of what they do. So, the first card in our ramp package is Mirror Convert. You've seen me use this in a lot of decks, because it's a 2-mana mana dork who works really well, but, God, why does he have Toxic? Apparently, they decided that Mirror Convert needed Toxic, and this is the only deck I've ever built where that amount of just degeneracy matters. Your mana dork can poison people. That's just a thing that you get to do. Also, Expand the Sphere. This is a 4-mana mana ramp spell. It lets you look at the top 6 cards of your library, put up to 2 lands from among them onto the battlefield tapped, and the rest of the bottom of your library in a random order. That's what you do if you're trying to ramp. Did I tell you that this card can lie? It actually also says, if you put fewer than 2 lands onto the battlefield this way, proliferate a number of times equal to the difference. So you can put a land out and then proliferate, or you can just proliferate twice, getting everybody 20% closer to dying. This is a ramp spell that we can use as an eliminate target player who looked at us funny spell. Honored Heirloom, of course, as a way to get rid of a person's graveyard pieces while also ramping us. Dawn Treader Elk is the hyper-budget version of Steve. He allows us to sacrifice him to put a basic land onto the battlefield. Font of Fertility is the green Wayfarer's Bauble. And of course, we have Wayfarer's Bauble. Pay 2 and sacrifice it to get a land from our deck onto the battlefield. Search for Tomorrow is a turn 1 play we have access to that also gets a basic land onto the battlefield untapped. Rampant Growth can search our library for any basic land card, throw it into play tapped. Then Utopia Sprawl and Wild Growth can both enchant a land to allow it to tap for 1 more mana. Please note, the Utopia Sprawl must touch a forest, so make sure you have specifically a forest out and not just like a command tower tapping for green. Then we have Spring and Mind. This is a 3-mana ramp spell that can also be a overcosted draw spell, but it is an instant spell So you play Spring on the first side to get a basic land for 3, which is overcosted, but it's okay. And then you use the Aftermath effect in the graveyard to draw 2 cards later in the game when you are running out. And it is likely we will be running out because we'll be spending a lot of cards to either kill people really quickly or to protect ourselves from just getting prolapsed by the enemy aggro player. Then we have Farhaven Elf. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for any basic land and put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle our library. All in all, a very, very robust ramp package. Like I said, we have a 12-card ramp package. We're in green. But let's go ahead and scroll up real quick to our draw package, because we have a little bit of spice in here as well, and a bit of a hint as to how we are going to be killing our commander off a lot. Our 11-card draw package begins with Vivisurgent Insight. Draw 3 cards and Proliferate, which of course increases the poison counters on everybody around us. Distorted Curiosity, it draws 2 cards, but if somebody has 3 or more poison counters, we draw those cards for the mana cost of 1 instead. Muldrifter, which we can evoke and make it basically a Council of the Soratomi. Just draw 2 cards for 3. But if you pay 5, it comes into play and draws you 2 cards. This has some synergies with a lot of the cards in this deck, and we'll talk about those here in a bit. But just a quick reminder, does anybody remember when Muldrifter was like standard draw in all commander decks that happen to have blue? Do y'all remember that? Do I feel old? Anyway, Kempster's Insight is an overcosted instant draw spell, but we're running it because it has Jumpstart. It can be played again while in the graveyard. Then we have Winged Words, a 3-mana draw for 2, normally a pretty good rate return, but it can drop for 1 mana less if we have a creature with flying out. And it turns out our commander is a creature with flying, so we actually benefit a lot from that. Then we have this monstrosity, this absolutely horrifying thing. You don't understand the nightmares this will cause people, but I understand the nightmares this will cause people. This is the Song of Erendil, and the song, first, for 5 mana, scries you 2 and draws you 2, so you get to dig through 4 cards of your deck. That's a pretty awful rate of return, since black can do that for 3 mana, but it's a saga, so the next part of the saga gives you a treasure token, it's a little bit of ramp, and a 2/2 bird creature token with flying. That's, again, it's okay. The bird is a good blocker. It's never going to make you really upset, but the last effect. Oh boy, the last effect. And there's a reason why this card is as dangerous as it is. So, at 3 saga counters, or lore counters, you put a flying counter on every creature you control that doesn't currently have flying. Did you know that a creature has to deal combat damage to somebody in order to spread an Infect counter over to them? Did you know that? Because if you know that, then you know how putting a flying counter on all of our creatures is an absolutely terrifying prospect. Did you know that you can proliferate lore counters? You don't have to wait 3 turns for the saga to go off. You just have to cast a couple cards that proliferate. Or you could just kill the commander. Did you know that killing our commander proliferates this card twice and automatically turns it on? Did you know that this card, as soon as we play it, we can look at our table and go, does anybody have a response? Because if not, I win? Because that's what this card actually reads. This is a terrifying monstrosity that Wizards of the Coast has given us for the low cost of 13 cents. By the way, for those of you who are audio-only listeners, did you realize that the price of every card is on the bottom of the card on these videos? So if you ever want to know, like, how strict the budget is on a deck, just look under the... There's a 13-cent I win the game card in this deck. I don't know how many ways I can explain that. Then we have Eureka Moment. It's an instant cast spell that draws you 2 cards and then puts a land on the battlefield from your hand. This is an instant cast, so we can play this at the end of the person's turn right before we pass to our turn, which is really, really good. Then we have the Ever-Flowing Well. When we play it, we mill 2 cards and then draw 2 cards. Then, if we have 8 or more permanent cards in our graveyards, we can transform it into another Oopsie Doodles I Win button. I'm so sorry, everybody. I just blew up the entire table because I enjoy just losing all of my friends. So, when you transform the Myriad Pools, it becomes a land that can tap for blue, which is fine. But then it says when you cast a permanent spell using mana produced by the Myriad Pools, up to 1 target permanent you control becomes a copy of that spell until end of turn. So, what are we doing with this? Why is this important? Well, let's say that our commander, who we've killed a billion times, our commander, who we've killed a billion times, is sitting inside the command zone. We cast it using our freshly ramped Myriad Pools mana. And then we say, I really don't need that Mere Convert anymore. I'm just going to turn the Mere Convert into a copy of my commander. Oh, I'm sorry. The Mere Convert is a copy of my commander? I guess it has to die. I guess my commander, quote, quote, has to die due to the legendary rule. And oh, what's this? When my commander dies, I proliferate twice. Everybody gets 20% fast, just closer to death. Again, Myriad Pools is a scary card that if you start using it on your opponents, nobody's going to let you actually keep the card while it's an artifact, because it's much harder to remove a land from the board than an artifact. This effect, if you play this at your tables, assuming they don't kick you out for playing Infect, once you do this effect once, nobody's going to let this card ever descend 8 ever again. And then we have Tezzeret's Gambit, 3 mana and a Phyrexian mana to draw 2 cards and proliferate. Really good card in any deck that cares about counters. Harmonize, a very basic pay 4, draw 3 cards. And then another monstrosity. I'm sorry, this deck is filled with landmines. This deck is chock full of cards that just accidentally create game-winning situations for you. So Ezreal, Stalker of Spears, if you play it, you can pay 3 and then proliferate twice, which is already good, and every time you proliferate, you get to draw a card. So if the deck is just doing its thing naturally, you are drawing a card for each time you do it. But, really, it just says when you proliferate 10 times, you get a maximum of 10 cards. Or 9 cards, really, because if you've proliferated that many times, everybody's already dead. It's just kind of how the deck works. So Ezreal's drawing us cards until everybody is dead. Or us, because we deserve it for playing an Infect deck. And you haven't seen much Infect in the deck yet, but we're going to get to the removal section first, and then we'll get to the Infect cards. We'll get to the main meat of the deck's strategy. This is totally not a way to pad videos so that people watch the entire thing all the way through. But anyway, let's go ahead and go to the removal and interaction package of the deck. Starting with, do I have to say his name? Do I really have to say his name at this point? You already know who this man is. You know what he does. You know why I love him. And I mentioned before that we have ways of abusing Moldrifter. All of those ways also abuse the Meteor Golem. I think I have a type. My type is Ashnod and Golgari Bommies, and I guess Meteor Golem as well. Like, if you drew tits on a Meteor Golem, it would be my type. Anyway, then we have Carnivorous Canopy. Blow up an artifact or enchantment or a creature with flying. But if that card had mana value 3 or less, we proliferate, which of course means we get to add more poison counters to everybody. Then we have the Pistis Strike. Blow up a creature with flying and then automatically give that person a poison counter. People are gonna make flyers on the board to block our flyers. So this is a perfect card to just remove those out of the way and give them a poison counter while we're doing it. Negate allows us to stop any non-creature spell. Bring the ending counters any spell unless its controller pays 2, but if they have 3 or more poison counters, then it's just a pure counter spell. It's just the best costed counter spell ever. Then we have Reject Imperfection, a 3-mana counter spell, but if it counters a little spell, we proliferate as well. Then we have Return to Nature. Blow up an artifact or blow up enchantment or tell the Reanimator player that his parents never loved him. Then we have Smell Fear. It automatically proliferates when we play it, and then it makes a creature we control fight one creature we don't control. This is one of the ways we are going to just kill our commander. We're either going to use this as a kill card to get rid of problematic things, or we're going to make our commander just suicide bomb into somebody's board, and then we get to laugh as everybody gets angrier and angrier as they get closer to 10 poison counters. Then we have Viridian Corruptor. It blows up an artifact when it comes into the board, but it also has Infect, so this is a way that we can get into people's lives and start the infectious disease of our deck. Speaking of infectious diseases, here's Infectious Bite. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control, and also each opponent gets a poison counter when you do this. This is one of our ways of just instantly starting the shenanigans of our deck. We don't need combat to give everybody poison counters. It's really helpful, but it's not necessary. And then we have Resculpt. Exile an artifact or a creature and give them a blue and red elemental token in its place. Exiling is one of the best ways we can remove cards off the board, so it's important to keep an eye on that. But let's go ahead and get into the part you all are waiting for. Let's talk about the Infect package, and yes, we are 13 cards deep on the Infect package because we need to make sure that people know that they will get poison counters, and there is no way around it. Let's start with this lovely little card. Until end of turn, target creature gets 1/3, gains flying, and gets Toxic 1. So we can put this on any of our little creatures we've played throughout the game. A mana dork if you need to. Give it evasion, give it toxic. This is just a 1 mana way to start our shenanigans on the person we like the least. Then we have Plague Nurse. Toxic 2. It's a 4 mana creature. You can pay 3 to give every creature you control with Toxic 1. So, fun fact, with this effect, you can actually just swing into everybody, and then if your creatures are not blocked and they have Toxic, you can pay 3, give every creature 1 more Toxic ability, and then you're off to the races. Now, there is a world in which you can blink this card as you do the effect and make sure that it gets to do its effect multiple times. Probably the jankiest way. You can create a everybody dies to Infect right now scenario, but it's certainly possible. Next, we have the Acrespick Basilisk. It is a 1/3 with Death Touch, and it has Toxic 1. This is just one of those creatures that we have to make people pay to block, basically. Then we have the Noxious Assault. This is another Oops, I Win button. So creatures you control get 2/2 until end of turn, and if any creature blocks the creature, its controller gets a poison counter. So we get to swing out with our board to everybody, play this, and then look at our opponents and go, if you don't block, you get poisoned. If you block, you get poisoned. If you blink at me, you get poisoned. If you go out and get pizza, it's poisoned. Just nothing good happens to our opponents when we cast this card. Then we have Worm Quake. Create an XX green Phyrexian Worm token with Trample and Toxic 1, which of course means that when the token makes damage with anybody, it's going to give the Toxic ability. X is equal to the amount of mana spent to cast this spell. So we pay 6 for it, make a 6/6 Worm with Toxic, which starts our shenanigans, also gives us a really big wally creature to block things. And then it has Flashback for 10. If you ever get to the point where you want to make a 10/10 Worm with Toxic 1, that's a thing you can do. Tainted Observer is a flyer that has Toxic 1, and whenever another creature enters your battlefield under your control, you may pay 2 and proliferate, which just gets us that much closer to winning that much faster. Then we have the Venomous Brutalizer. It has Toxic 3, and when it enters the battlefield, you can pay 1, and if you do, proliferate. Again, just the creatures that automatically can give everybody poison and also can increase poison is astoundingly wonderful. Tyranix Atrocity, Haste and Toxic 3. This is an overcosted creature that we are playing solely to say, oh god, oh dearie me my, everybody got board wiped? That is a shame. I'm gonna ram a dinosaur up your butt. Then we have Prologue to Pheresis. You draw a card when you play it, and every opponent gets a poison counter. This is one of our easiest ways to just start the proliferation train early. Then we have Gliss's Retriever. It has Haste, it has Toxic 3, it can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or less, and if it dies, exile it, and when you do, return up to X target cards from your graveyard to your hand, where X is the number of opponents who have 3 or more poison counters on it. Yes, that's right, we're not running basic recursion like we normally would in this deck, we are running Gliss's Retriever, because this card can retrieve many cards for us. It also can just kill a player with Toxic. Then we have Putrefax. It has Trample, it has Haste, it has Infect. This is basically a good version of the Tyranix Atrocity, but it's here, and it works out just as well anywho. And then we have the boy. If you play Modern, you know this guy. You know exactly what he is. You know what he does. You've already flipped the table looking at me. I've triggered your PTSD. You're upset. You're talking to therapy. Your therapist is looking at you wondering why in the hell a, 1/4 millimeter thick piece of cardboard is making you break all of the porcelain in your house. This is Blighted Agent. He cannot be blocked. He has Infect. That is all that is written on him, and that is all that needs to be written on him. And then we have Viral Drake. It's got flying, it's got Infect, and it can proliferate. This is our one-stop shop for everything our deck is trying to do. Kind of. Speaking of proliferate, we have a few ways of doing just that. You're probably used to seeing Thrumming Bird in a lot of my decks. It's like one of the easiest return on investment counters matter strategy cards you can pick, and it's just wonderful for this deck. Flying, if it punches a person, you proliferate. That easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Then we have Merfolk Skydiver. The Merfolk Skydiver has flying and has a bunch of text that doesn't matter. All that matters is that you can pay 5 to proliferate. If you're late in the game and you can't kill everybody, just play the Merfolk Skydiver and sink all of your mana into it while staring at your opponents and looking like you are a serial killer. That is all. You're a Simic deck. You can find ways to get the mana to make this thing work. I'm sure. I believe in you. All right. That's enough preamble. You know how we're getting our infect counters increased. You know how we are infecting everybody around the table. Now, how are we making everybody our enemies? How are we making them scream bloody murder at us? Well, do you see these 12 cards here? This is our copies package. And this is how we are going to make enemies. So let's begin with the Vizier of Many Faces. It ETBs as a copy of any creature you control. If it's embalmed, then it has some other text that doesn't matter. The Vizier of Many Faces comes down as a copy of our commander. We then choose. If we have a lot of mana, we kill our commander. If we don't, we kill the Vizier of Many Faces. Either way, we get the double proliferate off of it, and we get to laugh. Because this card has Embalm, we can just do it again right afterwards. There's just an easy, quick proliferating effect. Then we have Tomb of Horrors Adventurer, because I needed a sneak infect in here, or the initiative in here somewhere. Tomb of Horrors Adventure gives you the initiative when it comes out, which gives you a basic land from your deck into your hand, and then it has a bunch of other text on it that doesn't matter that much in this particular scenario. Whenever you cast your second spell every turn, though, you get to copy it. So, let's go ahead and cast our commander. Oh no, it's 2 commanders. Oh no, one happened to die. Whoops. Then we have Moray of the Frost, comes into play as a copy of any permanent we control. That can be a land, that can be our commander. That can be anything. It can be another copy of the Tomb of Horrors Adventurer, so that our second spell we cast is, you know, lots of bigly copies. Lots of minis. Then we have the Mirage Mockery. Create a token that's a copy of an artifact you control, or create a token that's a copy of a non-artifact you control, or you can pay 3 to entwine them. Most of the time, this is just going to be a 3-mana copy spell. We copy our commander auto dies, and then we are off to the races. Then we have the Blade of Shared Souls. Now we're getting into the nutty cards. It has Firmiridan. It makes a token when we play it for 3. Whenever it becomes attached to a creature for as long as Blade of Souls remains attached to it, you may have it become a copy of another target creature you control. Oh boy, this is an auto win. This card automatically wins us the game if we have a board with a few creatures. So, scenario, everybody has 1 or 2 poison counters on them, which is pretty normal. Blade of Souls is put into the board. For 3 mana, what the token it creates makes a copy of Roalesque. Roalesque sees that, and one of your cards has to die, because Legendary Rule says so. So you kill the copy that Blade of Souls has on it, or Blade of Souls has on it. Kaboom, bam, everybody gets 2 more poison counters. And then you went, man, I have this Ezri here, and I don't need him anymore. I'm just going to equip my Blade of Shared Souls to Ezri, and now he's also a copy of Roalesque. I paid 2 mana for that. Oopsie doodles, I guess his name is now Roalesque. I guess everybody dies. Okay, that's fine. I don't need that Thrumming Bird anymore now that he's punched somebody in the face and proliferated. I wonder if transforming him into a copy of my commander again will cause anybody to be upset as I blow him up repeatedly. This is one of those cards that, again, we play it once, everybody goes, oh yeah, that's a neat card you have there. That's a really interesting effect. And then we pay 6 mana into it, and everybody just kind of stares at us blankly as the game ended, and nobody got to have fun except us. When you're playing Infect, you understand that fun is a zero-sum game in the game of Commander, for you specifically, and you are trying to have all of the fun, and you are doing it at the cost of everybody else's fun. Just own being a piece of shit if you're going to be playing Infect. It's fine. Then we have Mercurial Pretender. We can have it enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature we control, but it also allows us to pay 4 and return the creature to our hand if we need to. So we can use this to copy something that's important to us early on, and then make it a copy of our commander when it is necessary. Or we can make it a copy of our commander, kill the commander, and then if somebody tries to get rid of this card with an exile effect, we can bounce it to the hand with its effect to protect it, and then start the train rolling again. Then we have Phantom Steed, another just really bonkers card. When it enters the battlefield, exile the creature you control until Phantom Steed leaves the battlefield. When it attacks, create a tapped and attacking token copy of the exiled creature, except it's an illusion in addition to its other types, and then sack it at the end of combat. So what does this say, really? It says, oh, the person to my right is ending their turn? I guess I'm flashing this in and exiling my commander. What's that, you said? My commander is gone, and it will only come back when the Phantom Steed is gone? I guess I'm ramming it at your throat again. And it makes a copy of my commander. and then the commander is dying automatically to the effect. You can either let my horse do this effect a lot of times, or you can kill my horse and my commander comes back, and I can just do this again anyway. The Phantom Steed is nutty in this deck, but not as nutty as the next thing I'm going to show you. The next card I'm going to show you is going to cause ire at your tables. Have you ever paid 4 mana and won the game instantly? No? It's certainly a feeling, let me tell you. And with Sakashima's Will, you will get that feeling. There's a lot of text on this card. The only part that matters is that it says, choose a creature you control, and every creature you control becomes a copy of that creature until end of turn. That's all that matters. If you have a board with 4 of your creatures, the deck has 26, plus the creature token creators we have, so closer to a higher number than that. You have 4 creatures out on the board. A very common amount to have out on the board with, any game of Commander. All of our creatures become copies of Roalesque. The legendary rule happens. All of them have to die except 1. I guess we proliferate 8 times. I guess everybody died. I guess they're all gone. Sakashima's Will is a 22-cent card where the only bit of relevant text is, I won the game and lost my friendships. Own it. Then we have the Cephalid Face Taker. Can't be blocked, and it can become a copy of any card, except it gains the can't be blocked ability. So this is another way that we have to make sure that our creatures with Toxic can get in. We just use the Cephalid Face Taker to become a copy of any of those creatures that don't have Evasion, and now it has Evasion. By the way, remember how I said this deck can abuse Mole Drifter and Meteor Golem? Clone the Mole Drifter and the Meteor Golem, and just get their ETB effects a lot if you're not proliferating. Then we have Quasi-Duplicate. It creates a token of a creature you control and has Jumpstart, so we can cast it again later. Croaking Counterpart creates a frog version of a creature you control, and it has Flashback, so we can do it again later. Have you noticed a theme here? Every single clone card we're using either can clone so many things it's nutty, can clone things repeatedly, or like this card and this card and this card and this card. They are all repeatable effects that we can use over and over again, or have some other kind of utility. When you're playing clones, don't use just things like clones. Use clones that have a bunch of other text on them that make them more funny and way better. Again, if you're playing a budget deck, your cards need to be doing double and triple duty because they are having to work twice as hard to keep up with the probably higher power level of the other decks you are playing at the table. So what you can do in budget decks is you're not running the highest power version of every card, but you are running more utility. You are running more redundancy. You are running stuff that, while not as powerful flat out, still has a lot going for it that certain higher costed cards simply do not have. Then we have Rally the Galadrim. It's a 4-mana clone. It creates a token copy of a creature we control, or you can conspire it and copy the card again, so we can make more copies of our commander that all auto die because of what our commander does. It's just even if our commander never dies, we're making a bunch of versions of him that will die, or at least want to die, or the people playing with us will want to die because we're playing Infect and we're just bad people. Also, we have 1 board wipe in the deck. I normally would like to run more than this amount unless the deck is really heavy into control, but I was only able to fit 1 in here, and I decided to go with one that had really, really good synergy with other things in our deck. Ezre's Predation. So, when you play it, for each creature your opponents control, make a 4/4 Phyrexian Beast token. Each of those tokens fights a different creature our opponents control, and then we get to keep whatever tokens live after that. So you play Ezre's Predation, you wipe the board, everybody's scared you're going to do combat, and then you just play Sakashima's Will, turning all the tokens into copies of our commander, and we get to just laugh as everybody dies. Everybody is just very upset with us, and that's the game. That's it. Then we need to move on to our land section. So we only have 3 dual lands here because Simic is really, really anemic on different types of duels. We have Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, and Vine Glimmer Snarl. I'd like to run more, but the deck is running with a very tight budget. And again, Simic is one of those colors that is very anemic when it comes to dual lands compared to, colors like Rakdos and Azorius that have access to like the Bicycle lands and other things. Then we have 7 fetching lands that can grab basic lands out of our deck. Bant Panorama, Terramorphic Expanse, Shire Terrace, Promising Vein, Escape Tunnel, and Evolving Wilds are all trade-offs. You trade the 1 land out for a new land of the deck's colors. And then you have Myriad Landscape, which doubles as a fetching land. And then we have another clone. We have one utility land in this deck, and it's another fucking clone. It's Littlejohn Mirror Lake. Now, if you're upgrading this deck, you can put more Simic lands in, you can put Karn's Bastion in, you can put more ways to proliferate and recur things, put a Balaged Recovery, put a Glasspool Mimic in here as another cloning land. But since we are on a tight budget, we only have access to the Littlejohn Mirror Lake here. And that is our 36 land mana base. The entire deck clocks in at $15.19. And you, for picking this deck, clock in as a terrible person. So, that's our Infect deck with Roalisk Apex Hybrid, also known as just Roalisk the Nuclear Bomb. Every single time this card is sitting and staring at a board wipe, you're just like, oh boy, please do it. Please blow him up again. I really want you to kill my commander. Fun thing, you can actually use this card as a way to threaten commander damage. Just infect 2 people and keep getting them closer to infect, and then just slam your commander into another person over and over again. As they creep up in commander damage, you're just like, hey, do you want to kill him to save yourself? You'll sacrifice the other 2 people protecting you from me. This guy is nutso. You are going to be summoning all kinds of clones to create copies of your commander. You're going to be using things like Sakashima's Will to instantly win the game. Your draw package is either repeatable or has super synergy with our poison counters or with our commanders flying, or you just play this one little 13-cent Lord of the Rings card and win the game instantly because you're able to proliferate it and just be an absolute menace. All of your toxic creatures have flying, and then you just ram them into people. Just over and over and over again. What's that? My Glissa's Retriever can't make it to your face? It has flying now. You can't stop it from making it to your face. Everybody gets poisoned. Everybody has a bad time. Now, if I were to mention any type of upgrades you could make to the deck that would be based on budget, I would suggest, aside from getting a better land base, the Karn's Bastion is obviously an option that you have access to. But if you're looking at the ramp package, some of our cards are very budget-minded. So like Farhaven Elf, as you upgrade the deck, make it a Wood Elf instead so we can grab your dual lands. Spring definitely needs to be upgraded to something like a Sky Shroud Claim. That will do us much better. Things like Dawn Shredder Elk will turn into stuff like Steve, also known as why can't I remember what Steve's actual name is? I've always just called him Steve. Oh boy, Sakura Tribe Elder, that's the one. Things like Font of Fertility will end up leaving the deck. Things like Wayfarer's Bauble will leave the deck as you get stuff like Nature's Lore, 3 Visits, Farseek. This goes for every green deck, by the way. Any green deck you're playing, when you're upgrading its ramp package, you always want Nature's Lore, Farseek, anything like that. Removal and interaction, as you upgrade, you will add things like Beast Within into here. Maybe get some things like Pongify, so you have very, very low-cost ways of removing things from the board. But overall, your removal package probably won't change all that much, since some of it is very specific, like Cankerbloom, Infectious Bite, Carnivorous Canopy. These are things that allow us to proliferate. There's a 4-mana counterspell that also can proliferate as well, that I've used in other decks. That was cut out of here due to budgetary constraints, but it certainly would go in as well. There's certainly a lot of things you can do here with the Proliferate package. I have a very basic Proliferate package, but you can add the elf that gets you a Proliferate off of every time you drop a basic or a land on the board in the Proliferate section. That's one way you can increase the power of the deck as you increase the budget, but the deck will certainly be a menace based on just how it is functioning right here. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you would like to play Roalisk Apex Hybrid, let me know down there so that I know never to play in a pod with you. I say as I'm slowly convincing myself to play him. I have a problem. I can't sell anybody anything, but I can sell myself on Roalisk. So there's that. Speaking of selling stuff, I might as well plug this here. In the description, you'll also find a link to my merch page, which right now only has this playmat on it, which is one if you are familiar with my main channel. Very, very awkward channel lore specific. Just a very brief overview of why things are what they are. I'm a fan of Sonic, so we have the Space Colony Arc in the background. And also, there is Blizzy, the little baby bio-lizard, who is part of my main channel lore. This just awful thing that people just made a ton of fan art of over the years that is now called the Nekoin. It just is a is just a Bitcoin, because I'm not a huge fan of blockchain stuff or cryptocurrency. So it's just me violently assaulting that thing in the middle of outer space, because why not? Space is cool. Anyway, that's going to be in the description for anybody who wants to have a playmat featuring stuff from the channel. That is there for if you would like to rep my channel at all. Don't feel that you are compelled to, but certainly I will appreciate anybody who picks up a copy of the mat and then takes a picture of it and shows it in my Discord. Anyway, as always, thank you all for watching the video. I appreciate it, even though it is one of the more just bastardly decks I've made. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'm always taking deck suggestions. And as always, everybody, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, I just quickly want to give a thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who keep this show running. YouTube and Twitch are a pretty bumpy ride at the best of times, and the stability that Patreon provides me is worth more than I can say here. I'd also like to thank each and every one of my $20 and up patrons here, and they would be Red Joker, Blitzkrieg, Cameron, Dren, Jemshin, Smiling DM, Poundini, Nabbity Babbity, Naomi, Isaac, Agamotto, Jordan, Ravi, Giuni, Kiratorian, Prisma, all of you, Sagitt, I'm not saying that part, and Starlight. And finally, thank you to everyone else that helps keep this channel alive. While you're here, why not check out another video? And thank you for watching.